What is going on, everyone? I think it is time to tackle a list I'd hinted at earlier this year but never got around to. When I listed the worst towns in America, I said I had to cut Southern California out because it had like 17 of the worst 20. When you suck that bad, you get your own list is the rule here. A couple of things with this list. I say town, but technically some of them are small cities. I'm just cutting out the major cities like Los Angeles and San Diego proper, not the big cities, okay? If I say cities in the title, I will have a bunch of geography nerds jumping up my butt, and I don't like anything jumping up my butt, especially geography nerds. Most of these are in the LA metro area or LA County. This is another list that I have enough here to make probably 3 videos, but we're gonna start with just one and see how it goes. That being said, if you want to know what towns to avoid in Southern California, you should probably start with Number 10, Huntington Park, California. Huntington Park has nothing to do with Huntington Beach. They are very different. One has beaches, the other has shootings. Huntington Park has about 58,000 residents. 63% of them are working and about 28% live in poverty. The average commute time for the residents here is about 31 minutes. Most people consider Huntington Park a working class neighborhood. If you took this city in its current form and plopped it down in another state like Kansas, the average house would fetch maybe $100K on the open market. But seeing that it's in Southern California, the average home price is closer to $500,000 or $600,000. When I lived in LA, I went to a community meeting with the National Guard. They made me go, but it was very interesting. A Huntington Park Latino activist was speaking, and he had a very good point about the town. The residents feel they're not represented in Huntington Park, in part because of an extremely low voter turnout. He said that you have the typical residents who don't bother to go vote, then you have a large portion of this town that isn't authorized to be in the US, so they can't vote either. So you have a whole bunch of residents that have no say in what's going on in their town or city. It's too bad. That's probably why it's been a nightmare forever. You watch the news long enough and it always seems to be that the car chases on the freeway end up in Huntington Park for some reason. It's weird. Number 9, Bell Gardens, California. Not too far from Huntington Park is Bell Gardens. Don't let the word gardens fool you. It has none. It's almost false advertising at this point. This is the type of city that 99% of the homes have metal security doors on them and about 60% have bars on the window, which is strange. We'll talk about that in a minute. Bell Gardens has about 42,000 residents, 63% of them are working, and almost 30% are living in poverty. According to one city official in 2000, the city has had to depend on a casino for much of its tax revenue. In 2002, it provided more than half the city's revenue. In 2010, it was still around there. It was about 45%. Remarkably, the crime isn't terrible in Bell Gardens like other cities surrounding it, but still, the poverty level is about 90% higher than the national average. It's not good. Number 8, Lynwood, California. If you're from Los Angeles, you most likely know not to visit Lynwood, and you really know not to live there. I guess its 70,000 residents never got the word, or they have no choice. This was the area I was assigned to during the LA riots. It sucked then, it's gotten a little bit better, but it still sucks. Lynwood has about 70,000 residents, and 28% of them are living in poverty. It was once called the best place to live best. Neat little thing they had going on there. But things didn't stay that way. It got bad around the 1960s, and back in the late 80s, it got worse when they built the 105 freeway right through town. Construction forced thousands to move, and it was completed and opened in 1993. It has caused the residents far more headaches than it's worth. The overall crime rate in Lynwood is about 13% higher than the national average. The poverty level is about 61% higher than the national average. Combine those two with the cost of living in Lynwood being about 28% higher than the national average, you definitely don't want to live here. Number 7, Monte California. Monte was incorporated as a municipality in 1912. During the 1930s, the city became a site for the New Deal's Homestead Project, a resettlement administration program that helped grant single-family ranch houses to qualified applicants. The lots in this town are kind of big. What sucks is back in the 1970s and 80s, they started tearing down the old homes that had these big backyards and big front yards and putting like 3 or 4 houses on the lot. This sort of destroyed what used to be a great place to live in Los Angeles. These days, the income per capita in El Monte is 48% lower than the national average. Crime isn't terrible, it also wouldn't be considered low. The unemployment rate in El Monte is 15% higher than the national average, and about 22% of the population live in poverty. The average commute time here is about 45 minutes. El Monte had a lot of revenue coming in from car dealerships, but during the recession they all kind of folded, and the city's tax revenue fell. It continues to have issues with its finances, and now the town's kind of struggling with marijuana production. They've got some big facilities that want to come in and start, growing their weed there, and some of the residents aren't on board with it. They might be by now, but who knows? Number 6, Palmdale, California. Palmdale is the type of place you move to when you've almost been priced out of California. Sort of like a purgatory before you finally give in and move to Vegas. If there weren't houses here, this would probably be a place you would just do off-roading type things if that's what you do. Or bury bodies if you're a serial killer and that's what you do. I lived here for 3 months when I was single because it was cheap. After a couple months, I decided free was too expensive to live in Palmdale. Luckily, I was saving so much living there, I didn't mind eating the 6-month lease. The bad news is Palmdale still sucks and now it's expensive. Not San Francisco expensive, but bad enough. The unemployment rate in Palmdale is 46% higher than the national average. The poverty level in Palmdale is 36% higher than the national average. The cost of living in Palmdale is 18% higher than the national average. You don't want to live in Palmdale unless you're into tumbleweeds. Number 5, Montebello, California. Montebello is just southeast of downtown Los Angeles, and it has a few minor problems, making it a little less appealing to most people. The income per capita in Montebello is about 29% lower than the national average. They don't have terrible poverty, but it's there. Crime is up there, but it's not terrible. What makes this town a bad place to live is the city next to it, for one. The City of Commerce shares a border with Montebello. It's about 80% warehouses and factories. If you've ever lived near an industrial area like this, you know it brings a host of problems, especially the number of people living in their cars and motorhomes at night. You know, the Geico is their landlord types. Now, what really puts the nail in Montebello's coffin is the cost of housing. For some reason, with all the problems and everything else, the real estate is sky high in Montebello. A housing expert told the New York Times in a 2019 article that prospects for first-time buyers weren't good and that opportunities to live in Montebello weren't growing and probably won't for years. Their property value is far too high for what you're getting there. Montebello has about 62,000 residents, 60% of them are working, and 14% live in poverty. The average commute time is about 33 minutes. And this is a weird little fact about the place. About 25% of the population of Montebello doesn't have health insurance. Number 4, Long Beach, California. The city of Long Beach was officially incorporated in 1897, so the town's been there a while. Long Beach grew as a seaside resort with a little farming. The Pike was a beachside amusement park in Long Beach from 1902 until 1979. It had food, games, rides, it had a sky wheel, dual Ferris wheel thing, a roller coaster. It was apparently kind of nice. Those were the good times for Long Beach. My grandmother used to talk about how growing up, Long Beach was where you aspired to live. That's where if you had money, you went and moved to Long Beach. Sometime around the 1970s, the place nosedived. The overall crime rate in Long Beach currently is 31% higher than the national average. The cost of housing in Long Beach is 116% higher than the national average. It costs far too much to live in Long Beach for what you're getting these days. A little side note to this one, that amusement park, the Pike, now they'd closed it down in 1979. And it was somewhere around the mid-80s that they started actually tearing the place down. They had a fun house or a haunted house type thing, and when they were taking it down, they had these mannequins that, were there to scare you or whatever. Well, one of them kind of broke. They found a body inside that had been there since the 1800s. I'm not even kidding. There was a body in there all those years. He'd probably been put in that, it was, I guess, cased in wax or something like that. But this person was put in there in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they found him in the 80s. That's just crazy. Number 3, Compton, California. Compton has about 96,000 residents, 40% are working, and about 25% are living in poverty right now. Not the worst numbers, but definitely not the best. The city struggles with poverty and unemployment, but it's no longer as dangerous as it was back in the straight out of Compton days. In 1991, there were 87 murders in the city of Compton. Only got 96,000 people. That's a lot. In 2018, it was down to 22 murders. That's progress. They had the lowest number in decades back in 2015 with only 13 murders. Whenever I do a worst crime or murder video, I always get someone asking about how come Chicago's not on the list, or how about why isn't Compton on the list? Chicago is bad, but not nearly as bad as people think, and they put it out on the news as. And Compton was extremely bad, but the 1990s ended a few years back, and they're much better now. As an example, the overall crime rate in Compton is 39% higher than the national average. The overall crime rate in Detroit, in comparison, is 138% higher than the national average. The thing that really sucks about Compton is all the categories used to grade a city are all graded F, except for weather. So the good news is if you get robbed or assaulted, it's probably going to be done on a sunny day. Number 2, Hemet, California. Now this list is in no particular order. I say that because a lot of these towns on this list are equal in the amount of suckage they possess. The last 2 on this list are statistically the same except for population. So we'll start with Hemet. Hemet was the place to move to back in 1995. Around 1999, people started changing their mind about Hemet. About 2010, the people who had moved there realized they'd made a horrible mistake, sort of like taking my cousin's ex to a buffet. Hemet has a population of about 85,000 people. It struggled since the 2008 recession with foreclosures and getting people back to work. 25% of the people live in poverty and crime rates are high. In 2016, 623 cars were stolen in Hemet. 173 robberies were reported and police logged 398 aggravated assaults, the most this century. Hemet is definitely a place you don't want to move to. And number 1. Barstow, California. Barstow is a wasteland of regret and despair. Nobody moves here willingly. That's what a friend's wife told me. She grew up there in the 1990s. The friend was in the military and he stopped by there to get some gas. She was working at the gas station. He just wanted gas. Now he's been married 15 years and has 4 kids. Barstow will do that to people. Barstow is part of what they call the Inland Empire in California. What kind of empire's only export is residents looking for a better life? Not a good empire. 28% of the residents live in poverty. The only reason anyone goes to Barstow or stops in Barstow is to get gas on the way to Vegas. The place sucks. The overall crime rate in Barstow is 95% higher than the national average. There is no reason to move to Barstow, California. Alright, so that is the worst towns in Southern California. Hope you guys got some information out. Hope it was entertaining. Like I said, this one was just about Southern California. I could do like 5 of these. It's that bad in California. Anyway, don't forget all the links below. Give the video a big thumbs up. Tell me what you thought. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.